Hi everyone and welcome to the Bumble Stitches podcast, a podcast about knitting, a little bit of sewing and a little bit of craftiness in general. My name's Nicola. I live in Suffolk, originally from London, as you might tell from my accent, and I love watching podcasts from all around the world. The American girls, the Canadian girls, I love the grocery girls, all the British podcasts. So I thought, as I love watching them so much and I'm always seeking out new ones, that it might be fun just to do one myself and see if anyone wants to share a little bit of time with me. A bit of background, I started knitting as a child, was actually taught by my next door neighbour, and it was painful to say the least. It was me not really being able to understand how to turn the knitting to do the next row, but I persevered and knitting was probably my first crafty love. I carried on knitting through into my teens when I started working in the city, and I can actually remember there were quite a few nice yarn shops around the city at the time. Of course, back in those days it was all very much mohair jumpers with big shoulder pads stitched into them and brightly coloured patterns and so on, but it was all good fun, and that's sort of where my knitting love lies. Time moved on and I kind of stopped knitting. I think a lot of people did. It fell out of fashion for quite a while, certainly in the UK. But then as I got older, I started to rekindle my love of craft, started doing a lot of paper crafting, and that's kind of waned as I've gone back to all things knitting, sewing, sort of fibre and fabric related. So a bit of crochet, a bit of knitting, some sewing, and recently even a little bit of dressmaking, which hasn't been a great success, but I do plan to do some more in the future. Okay, so that's a little bit about me. I'd like to start off by showing you some recently finished objects that I have. First of all, some socks. And these socks here are the vanilla latte socks. They've been knitted on hawthorn fingering weight yarn, I believe, from Knit Picks. And it's the stitch definition that I like on these. They came out quite well. There is another one, so there's two socks. And these have been knitted for Justin's dad as part of his Christmas present. And I also, fairly recently, realised the wonders of blocking. I'd knitted a couple of items before and never been really satisfied with how they came out, and then realised that everybody else was blocking their items and I wasn't, and that's why everything looks much more professional than my finished objects. So, wonders of blocking. I've also got another Christmas present that I've made for one of my aunties. She's also a knitter, so a little bit more pressure there. And these are the Hermione's Everyday Socks, knitted on Molly from Homespun House's yarn in the Mermaid from the Black Lake colourway. And I really enjoyed knitting these. I don't know if the camera's picking it up, but they have got some stellina in there as well. I don't know if I mentioned they're the Hermione's Everyday Sock pattern, which is one of my go-to patterns. I just did a 1x1 rib and the heel pattern that comes within the pattern, which I like because it's got the slip stitches and the little bit of garter stitch here, which I think gives it quite a nice finish. And again, looks so much better when they're blocked. Okay, moving on to another recently finished object, which is quite a mammoth task, which I started in the summer, which was a sweater that I made for Justin. I'll just reach across and grab that. Okay, he's been wearing it ever since I made it, so it's actually got a little bit worse for wear because he's literally lived and died in it. And this is the Hugo sweater. It's paid for pattern on Ravelry, and you can see the sleeves and the front patterned, as is the back. Quite a simple cable pattern, moss stitch down the sides, and this was knitted in Drops Alaska, I believe, so it was quite quickly knitted up because it was thick yarn, but still did take quite some time because I kept picking it up, putting it down. It was summertime, little bit hot for having this on my lap. We did change the neckline on this because the original pattern called for a higher sort of funnel neck with a split in the side and a couple of press studs, but he decided that wouldn't be too practical. It might be a little bit warm, so we went for a round sort of crew neck, which I think turned out quite well, and it's fine with the shirt. So that was a big success because he'd been bugging me for ages to knit him a sweater. So that's another recently finished object. I mean, I have been doing an awful lot of knitting this year, and quite a few finished objects have been produced. But as if I decide to do some more podcasting, then perhaps I can share a few bits sort of from my archives, as it were, as the podcast continues. Okay, let's move on to works in progress. Not too many of those at the moment. I'm trying to keep my needles fairly free because I get a little bit skittish and jump between projects and find that I just do half an hour on each one and nothing seems to progress very far. But with Christmas coming up, there's a few more presents I'd like to get done. So I'll start with the first one. And this is actually a little project bag that I made. I was very lucky. My mum and dad recently purchased a new sewing machine for me. My old one was really clanky and clunky. So they bought me a lovely Janome sewing machine, and this was one of the first items I made with it. So thank you to them. Inside here we have yet more of the lovely homespun house yarn, which is the, this one is, I'm trying to remember the colourway, Half Blood Prince. Again, it has stellina in it, but I don't know if the camera is picking the twinkles up. The light isn't fab here today, being a November day in the UK. But lots of lovely colours in there, and my daughter Lucinda chose it. And they are Hermione's Everyday socks again. And really nice the way the colours are changing through this. This is actually the second sock. I'm just about ready to start the heel. And I do have the other sock in the bag too. But as you can see, I've yet to Kitchener the toe. I need to really concentrate when I do Kitchener because otherwise it goes horribly wrong and I end up with lumpy bits and goodness knows what. So yeah, they'll be done for Christmas. She's got tiny feet, so that's always handy when you're knitting socks for people. She's only a size UK size 3, so little baby feet, so nice and easy to knit up those for her for Christmas. Okay, next work in progress. If I keep bopping down, it's because I'm just popping things on the floor, which is going to be like a bit of a knit-ageddon by the time I'm finished. Okay, moving on, another yummy project bag. I do have a bit of a thing about project bags, which I'm sure most of us knitters do. This one, I don't know if you can see the little tiny embroidered bee on the bag and the hand-stitched hexagons. This one actually came from Betsy Makes through her Etsy shop. Absolutely beautiful handmade bag. I love it. Just the right size for socks. And in here I have for another pair of Christmas socks, and these are for Emily, Justin's daughter. She's 9, and what 9-year-old wouldn't like a pair of really stripy rainbow Felici socks for Christmas? This is a nice stretchy pattern. She's got quite little legs but growing feet. So there's one sock finished, and the other is in a little bit of a state of disarray at the moment. Started turning the heel and realised the heel was far too short. I'd only done half the required amount of rows, so that needs to be ripped back a little bit to continue with those. As I mentioned, the yarn for these is Knit Picks Felici in the rainbow colourway. Perfect for a 9-year-old, I think. Nice and colourful and bright, not boring at all. And the pattern I'm using for these is a pattern by Susan B. Anderson. It's a free pattern on Ravelry, and the pattern is called Ribbed Socks for Kids, and Spud and Chloe seems to be the branding there. Not sure if that's a collaboration, but if you need to do some socks for little ones, this is a great pattern, and free patterns are always a bonus. So that's another work in progress. So I'm hoping that, seeing as it's only 27th of November today, it's Sunday, that I'll have enough time to get those items finished and blocked and gift wrapped for Christmas. That's the plan anyway, but fingers crossed. Okay, so moving on with the works in progress. Next project is a little bit bigger. This is not Christmas gift knitting, this is actually for myself. And it's a Hokey Locatelli pattern. It's the Madewell cardigan, which I think lots of people will be familiar with because you've seen it on Instagram and on Ravelry. It's a really nice, what I would call everyday cardigan that look great with jeans, hopefully, trousers, whatever. I'm not sure if I'm going to go for the elbow patches yet. We'll see how I feel at the end. But I do like the construction of the sweater very much because it's made in one piece and I don't have to do any seaming at the end because making up garments is not really my strong point, although I'm getting better after doing Justin's Hugo sweater. Okay, I'm going to get this out of the project bag now and hope it doesn't all go everywhere because I've still got the sleeves on the needles. Okay, let's get it around the right way for you. I hope you can all see this clearly because I've got the camera set up. So I've knitted the body of the sweater and one of the sleeves, which I'm just down to the ribbon on the cuff, which is good news because I haven't really enjoyed knitting the sleeves as much as I did the main body. I've never knit a cardigan or sweater in one piece before and I really like the construction of it, that you just start off from the top and the sleeves are sort of set in, so there's no worrying about those later on. And then you get to the armhole and then you leave the stitches on waste yarn and continue on down the sweater in reverse. When I got to picking up the stitches for the sleeves, I had a bit of a panic because the rest of the sweater had been knitted on circulars. I've done them on my, I've got some Chiagu interchangeables, which I love. And then I realised I didn't have a cable short enough for the circumference of the sleeve here. So that was a little bit of a puzzler for me. I had to get DPNs out. That really wasn't working well. And then it dawned on me that maybe I should do a magic loop. So that's essentially what I did. Got some nice smooth addies here. I tried it on some Knit Pro Symphonies, but they were catching a little bit at the join and that was really, really annoying. So far so good. Hopefully, I always worry about laddering when I do magic loop. I'm just going to show you along, that would be the point where the magic loop sort of turn happens. I'm hoping that's going to block out because it's a little bit messy. So we'll have to hope that that does block out. But I couldn't really think of another way to do the sleeves without doing it magic loop. This yarn that I have here is absolutely gorgeous. I love it. It was a custom dyed sweater quantity that I got from Zena at the Little Yellow Uke. She has an Etsy shop. And the yarn is her Soprano sock base, 4-ply. And it's the Chantilly colourway. So really fancied a nice girly pink cardigan. It'd just be nice with sort of like a white t-shirt and some jeans in the winter. I'm a bit of a girly girl, so I like a bit of pink. It's knitting up really lovely. I can't praise this yarn highly enough. I bought 6 skeins because being not a small person, I thought I would need to get quite a lot of yarn to make sure I had enough in the custom colourway. But that's skein 4. I only have one more sleeve to do. Oh, and the neckband, which is quite a lot of ribbing. So I shouldn't see it taking more than about 5 skeins of yarn, which will leave me one to make a pair of matching socks for me or somebody else. So that's the Madewell cardie. That may have to go into hibernation until after the Christmas knitting's done though, because time's pressing on and I can't really be dedicating too much time to doing that when I've got gift knitting to do. I'll just show you as well, the project bag I'm using for that is a lovely Mrs. Brown's bag in this lovely knit to live, live to knit sort of tattoo style knitting print. I love it. I think it's really, really cool. It's got a great lining and it's a nice flexible bag and I can just squish the Madewell into it, stick it in my other bags and it's good to go. And also a godsend that I recently discovered is this circa counter. So I don't know if you've seen these about on the internet or on Instagram. They're made by Grello and Gray, and rather than writing everything down and ticking off rows and pattern repeats and so on and so forth, decreases, increases, you can just turn the little dials around and then just click the counters to correspond with your rows, decreases and so on as you go along. And this is an amazing little tool, so I'd highly recommend, if you don't have one of these and you're prone to losing your places or your pen, or you don't want to keep writing it down, then this is an absolute godsend. So Lulu actually bought me this for my birthday, so that was a really, really good present. Pop that away. I hope I'm not going too quickly. I'm conscious of the fact that I might be sort of babbling on a bit, but we'll see how it goes. I must say I've been inspired recently. There's been a couple of ladies that I follow on Instagram that have done their first podcast recently, and that kind of gave me the push I needed to just have a go myself, because I thought, well, you know, it's really nice to see what people are up to, what they're making, and just share a little bit of what we do. So that's the reason why I started this today. I do have another work in progress that I'd like to just share with you now. This is another Christmas gift knitting, and this time it's the Windswept shawl, which is by Homespun House. Just got the pattern here. Just see if I can show that to you. That's the Windswept shawl. It's paid for pattern. I think it's available on Ravelry and on Molly's shop.